Hello and welcome to Sass Bites. This is your weekly bite of Sass during your lunch break. I'm Micah Godbolt. I'm your host this week. You can follow us there at Micah Godbolt or follow Sass Bites directly at Sass Bites. I guess me at Micah Godbolt, us, Sass Bites, whatever. So today we're going to be diving into a new series. I decided I've been wanting to kind of do this for a while. That I've had a chance to use Flexbox the last project I'm on, and it's been pretty amazing. But there was a learning curve coming into it with all the different terminology, all the different properties that you could apply to not only the containers, but the items inside of it. So really wanted to take some time to dive into those, explain what those are. So hopefully when you dive into the project, excuse me, you'll have a leg up on that. You'll kind of know what to expect. When I spoke last week, I spoke about how we were able to get Flexbox into a current project, even with needing IA9 support. So I was like, hey, good chance to talk about Flexbox. So I'll shut up now. Let's dive into some Flexbox demos. This is, let's see, there, either one. Hey, that's new. I've never had Chrome actually crash in the middle of a Hangout for me before. Um, but that's how we fly around here. So let's try this one more time. Trying to look at presentation mode. Let's try it this way. Hey, that works a whole lot better. Don't try and share the Chrome app on the other screen when it's presentation mode. Apparently that crashes things. So cool. And hopefully this all works and you're getting it. So what we're going to talk about today is Flexbox and really the basics of Flexbox. And of course, my setup is not the way I was expecting it. There we go. There we go. And I didn't realize down here you can actually change the font size with this down at the bottom. Go CodePen. So I'll make sure I have this CodePen out to everyone else as well. So with that crazy start done, let's talk about how this is going to work. So I've got 6 basic divs. I've put some colors on them so you can just see the differences of them. They're inside the parent container. Actually, let me just bring up the HTML again. Real basic, I've got a container and I've got a bunch of element divs. Each one has a different amount of text inside of it, and I apply some color to them. So in their basic state, and in the container, I'm going to put just a little bit of width and margin in the background to kind of give some context. So in their basic state, they stack like any block element should, going from number 1 down to number 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to start applying some of the container level styles to the container and see what changes in the contents. Now, next week, I'm going to dive into the actual content or the elements flex styles, because there's actually 2 completely different set of styles. There's the styles that are applied to the container and styles that are applied to the elements inside of it. So I'm going to walk through each one of those and show you what they do. So the first thing we can do is just say display flex. Now, one thing to note here, if you are doing Flexbox at all, just use auto prefixer or prefix free or something like that. There's really no need right now to create mixins to do all this craziness. Get on the auto prefixer train. It makes life a whole lot easier. It's built right into CodePen. You're good to go. So we are saying display flex, but of course we're getting all the other, dash WebKit and blah, blah, blah. So let's uncomment that. And what's the first thing we get? Wow, that's a big change. For one, we're getting all the content from left to right. All of the columns are full height. It's pretty crazy just what a single display flex will do. Now, this is display flex on the container. So that means all the elements inside of it are flex items. Now, by default, flex items are in a row, and they are stretched, and they are no wrap, and they are flex start, and they are stretched aligned content. All these guys I've got down here, these are actually the default values. If I turn them all off, nothing will change because these are the default values. This is a combo value, so that doesn't have anything there. So let's go through each one. Flex direction. Obviously, when I turn it back on, row is the default, so nothing changes. But I can change this to row reversed. No D at the end. And they flip directions. Pretty amazing. You don't have to change the order of your DOM to get things going right to left, left to right, right to left. Great for supporting RTL and LTR languages. But we can also do the actual direction of these. So what if we wanted them to actually be vertically stacked? Well, we can go back to column. And that basically gets us back to that same point. You might be going like, well, why did I do that? What's the point of that? Well, there's a lot more things in here that you can then do once you have column. And I'm actually thinking about doing an entire thing just on column to see what the differences are, because most of the stuff I'm going to show today is really going to be about row. But also just a point, you could also do column reverse as well. So you see how, how it starts at the bottom of the container and works its way up. So pretty awesome. But let's go ahead and let's stick with row, and let's talk about how all these other properties work within the context of row. The first one is align items. And I'm trying to remember how I want to do all this. So we start with stretch. And this is how the items are stretched across the parents. I mean, I probably should talk about axes sometime. Maybe I can bring that in next week. But I can do flex start. And you see that really they're aligned just above the top. They're not stretched across it. I can do flex end. And I'll put them down at the bottom, working their way up. So it's really handy. This is kind of like the CSS align property, but it actually works, which is great, because then you can do things like center, and the stuff inside just actually centers properly, and it's pretty amazing. As well as baseline, which is, I think, is very subtly different from flex start, but uses the baseline of it instead, and then back to stretch. So align items is super powerful, allows you to basically either stretch or place those items along the axis of the flex. So in this case, we're going left to right in a row. And you to set where those things are starting, or where they stretch across, or where they're placed. So that stuff's pretty awesome. Let's go ahead and go with flex start as we move on. All right, the next thing is flex wrap. So as you can see, we've got a bunch of content going along here, and maybe it's too much content. Maybe there's too much to fit in these tiny little rows, because as you can see, the way this thing makes space along here, it's kind of messy. Like this, this little three, this lorem ipsum gets broken down pretty horribly. So let's talk about flex wrap. The basic setup is no wrap, basically saying that whatever content you toss in, it's going to stretch across that row that you give it. So I'm going to change this to wrap. And everything wraps. So it takes every single piece of content and tries to wrap it. Now you can see with this 2 and 3, the content's actually small enough that it does wrap on top of each other. But for the most part, everything just stacks. Now, that's because the stuff we're putting in here, each of these columns, is 100% width. It's just a block element. So it's going to try and take up as much space as it needs to fill its content. The text wraps all the way around, so it uses the whole thing. Now we can change that, and we can kind of see how this works a little better if we give some kind of a size. And I'll get in this later when we do the flex items. There's a flex basis concept, but right now I just want to change the width. I'm going to give each of our columns an actual width, and what that's going to do is, without flex wrap, you can see how each one is going to be equal width. And I'll talk way more about why they're not actually wrapping yet, but I'll talk about that later. But when we turn on wrap, you see that this 20% means that we're going to have the first 25%. The first 4 going across the top row, and the next 2, since there's 6, go along the bottom. And so that is what that wrap allows it to do, is if the content won't fit in the row, it'll wrap down to the next row. Now we can also do this reverse. Everything's lots of things have reverse keywords. So you see it starts from the bottom and starts wrapping up. So it starts on the bottom left, goes down, and wraps up. So we can do row reverse, and it actually changes the content and goes up. So we've got it completely reversed. Anyway, so Flexbox gives you a lot of options and flexibility as to how this content is laid out within it. Excuse me. Flex flow is just a simple way to set the flex direction and flex wrap. So if I want the direction to be, column and wrap to be wrap, I can just set it like that. So you see how it wraps over to the right. Or if I want no wrap, anyway, it's just an easy way to be able to do both of those values in one instead of having to set them, set both of them. I'm just going to turn that off now so we can just key off of those top values. All the way over. There we go. So justify content. Justify content's pretty awesome. It starts with flex start. And I'm trying to remember exactly what this is going to do. Go flex end. Hey, look at that. Okay, so justify content is going to be basically the content aligned across your flex direction. So across the row, or if you're doing columns, across the column. So flex start is your standard. Everything's aligned to the left. But again, we can also do flex end. So this is kind of like, justify right in Microsoft Word or something like that. And obviously, we can also do center. And one thing you're going to note, if you don't have content that doesn't fill up the whole space, this justify content's not going to do much for you. For example, like if your flex wrap is turned off, obviously there's no room for things to move back and forth or to center or anything. So you need to have content that doesn't fill up the entire flex row. And just a note, if you start playing with justify content, you're like, hey, it's not doing anything. So the last two are really nice. Space between. There we go. Basically takes whatever space is available and puts it between all the elements. And let me actually change this to, let's go with 33%. Or maybe 30% or something like that. Anyway, so you can see the space gets distributed evenly between all of the elements. So, the equal amount of space here and here. So it's kind of a gutter-ish. It's just whatever's left over. Flexbox really doesn't have a gutter concept where you can say like, 5% or like 20 pixels or something like that, but you can distribute that space evenly, which is quite nice. The other one, instead of putting the space between, is to put space all around. So it's pretty simple, just pull things in. What it means is that it has a margin on the left and on the right, and then on the left and on the right, and on the left and on the right. So there's margins all around each of the items. So that's great. All right. So this last one that we're going to do is align content. Align content is another one that's going to be hard to see unless you have a particular circumstance. That circumstance being if your flex content isn't filling up the entire height of the container. So it's kind of the opposite of justify content where it goes left and right. Align content is top to bottom. So if your content is exactly the same size as your container, if this is turned off, it's not going to do anything because it's trying to align it vertically. So we need to either have some artificial height in there, or when you start getting into some more complex flex items where you have like flex containers inside of the flex item and so on and so forth, you'll see this a little more often when you have stretch properties set on stuff. But align content, what it allows us to do is typically stretch is what we want. Let's see if I'm flex. Hey, here we go. So flex start brings everything up to the top. And it looks like it actually keeps your rows normal. So here's the first row, here's the second row, like that. We can also do flex end. Places all that content at the bottom. Now again, it looks like it lines up the tops of these, which is really nice. It doesn't just slam everything to the bottom. It's just where does this content start? We can do center, which is great. Now, again, with the centering thing, you'll see that these things are lined up. It's not quite the same as which one was it? The flex items, center, align items, I think, is that all these items are still lining up. It's actually moving the items, not just the content inside of it. You can do space around, as well as space between. There you go. And then back to stretch. Stretch. Like that. Now, stretch isn't going to do much because the, what do I need to change? Instead of align items, let me do this with this. Stretch. Boom. Okay, there we go. All All right. So as you can tell, this aligned content works a little bit differently when you have stretch versus flex start. So let's look at some of those again. So like flex start, whoa, come on, type. Flex end and center. So that stretch works really well with this because what it does is it makes everything on this row the same height. So we're centering everything, yes, but these are all the same height. So you've got this row being the same height and that row being the same height. If we don't do aligned content like that and we center things up here, you see how things don't line up. Like it's the center line goes right through the middle instead of being centered right at the top of it. So it's aligning the items versus aligning the entire content. So anyway, that's just the container. That's all the different things you can do just in the row direction with Flexbox. I think I might put one kind of the same demo together next week, looking at how we can use this with the column direction and how all these things are going to impact that. But this gives you just a really good start of how you can use Flexbox and what all of these different values do. So thanks for sticking through my randomly getting kicked out of the Hangout. I'm glad the Hangout was still here when I came back. Next week, we're going to look at the column view and what all of these properties, how those look and how those work for that. And then we're going to get into the containers and uses, and Flexbox is going to be, it's probably going to take me a while to get through all the content because there's lots to do. But this is going to get you started. I'm going to tweet out the link to this CodePen, and definitely go check out CodePen to do this kind of work. It's really handy for it. Especially with having like that built-in auto prefixer and those kind of things. So thanks for checking it out. Catch us next week as we talk more about Flexbox, and we'll continue to do all this fun Flexboxy stuff. So go out there and have fun, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.